Enjoy a seat at the table and good company, where great conversations and meaningful discussions happen.
Welcome to And Good Company. I'm Sarah Beetleholtz, a conversationalist. We all know that what makes a dinner party great isn't really the food. It's the company. It's about the people sitting around the table having lively discussions and conversations. Well, I'm excited to be able to have at my table Susan Mendenhall, who is the president of Arts United, as well as the chairman of the board of Arts United. So welcome.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. It's really fun to be here with you. And actually, I'm the staff president of Arts United, but I am not the board chairman.
Okay, stand corrected.
Our board is wonderful, and our chairman is Doug Wood.
Okay, well, apologies to Doug, but I assume you do it all, so I'm giving you the credit. So let's talk a little bit about Arts United and what it is and how it functions. Because I don't think that there's a clear, to me, I was very confused about that. I thought it was, an actual organization that put on events and performances, but that's not the case.
Yes, Arts United, if you think about what we do, we are the one organization that doesn't do any art at all. In fact, we are often in the background coordinating, developing, and supporting arts and culture nonprofits and individuals who do murals and performances and exhibits and dance and all of the wonderful types of art forms that engage our community. Technically, in industry speak, Arts United is what is considered a local arts agency, which means that we're a service organization that provides coordination of facilities, back office type of work for nonprofit organizations, coordinating fundraising and grant making and community development activities.
And it's considered a Arts United fund, actually, right? Which is, it's like that there are several of them. How many are there in, this is the only one in Northeast Indiana, correct?
Yeah, we're the only local arts agency. United Arts Fund is a component of what we do, which means that we raise funds every year and we distribute those funds to arts and culture nonprofits and programs to really advance and accelerate how the community can engage in arts and culture.
And it's one of the oldest, isn't it?
That's right. Arts United was formed in 1955. And actually, when we were founded as the third oldest organization of our kind, we were founded to develop a cultural district downtown. And at the time, downtown was going through a period of rebirth. And there were a number of buildings that had been built during the development of the canal. And those buildings had fallen into some pretty serious disrepair. So the city of Fort Wayne formed the Redevelopment Commission, which is a component of the city, a tool of the city that helps to redevelop components or buildings of our community. And then they also formed the Fine Arts Foundation, now known as Arts United, to begin to create a vision for what arts and culture could be in Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana. And at the time, we were really playing to our strengths. We had this really growing arts and cultural scene. We had a really strong art school, which later became the Museum of Art. We had a really strong theater scene. We had a growing Philharmonic and a fabulous ballet company. And it was determined that these organizations needed spaces that the community could access them. So the Redevelopment Commission worked with the Fine Arts Foundation to imagine a cultural district in downtown Fort Wayne. They hired a world-famous architect, and they hired this architect named Louis Kahn, who was one of the foremost architects of his era, this mid-century era. And they called around to other communities and looked at what other communities were doing. And ultimately, New York City, Atlanta, Georgia, and Fort Wayne, Indiana were all thinking about the same time, around the same lines. And so the development of the Arts Campus was really modeled after Lincoln Center in New York City. So Arts United was founded in 1955 to do that. By 1961, we had worked with Louis Kahn to design or envision a 10-building cultural facility in downtown Fort Wayne Today, we have 7 co-located buildings that serve about 17 resident organizations that impact about 614,000 people per year. So it's a pretty significant investment that was envisioned in the early 60s.
Well, they really did have a vision because, I mean, the foresight, because they also wanted to create like a designation. They said, like, we didn't have the ocean and we don't have the mountains. So what can we do? Play to our strengths. And so they said, we're going to become a Midwest arts destination.
Yeah, absolutely. And they knew that arts and culture organizations would need facilities. They knew that those organizations would need funding and that we would need to really organize the community around being able to support this arts and cultural infrastructure. So Arts United was born and has really evolved over the last 60 years to align the work that arts and culture nonprofits do with the vision of the community.
And so you really have 3 kind of mission roles, I guess you would say. You fund the arts. So in that case, how does that work?
Well, our fundraising and grant making is very community based. And as a staff member, I actually have no authority to grant anybody any money at all. We go through processes that involve volunteers that review requests for funds and make a recommendation to Arts United's board to distribute community dollars. Arts United is a tool that helps funnel community assets and dollars into places that make a difference. So it's important that we have community members helping to steer those decisions.
Right. And it actually, because of Arts United in some ways, serving as like the back office or consolidating some of the services that these arts organizations need, that you're actually on average able to save 1.3 million a year that these arts organizations would have had to spend, but then you're also able to take that money and then give more money out to the community. So it's really, you're also doing really economies of scale of helping them. And a lot of the arts organizations also probably don't have the acumen or, to really know how to, they know how to do the arts and culture, but not necessarily run the business side of an arts and culture or, nonprofit entity.
That's right. Well, we want to be able to position people to do what they do best, which if you are an actor and you're working for the Fort Wayne Youth Theater, we want you to be engaging kids in theater, not having to figure out how you're going to coordinate health insurance. So we're able to take some of those activities that help arts and culture organizations attract and retain really high quality talent, do it at scale, so that we're able to negotiate lower rates and find some savings financially, which just makes good business sense. But it also really invests in the human capital of arts and culture in our community and allows our organizations and their leaders to really focus on their programs and their missions.
So does Arts United, is it all, is there any public funding? Like, do you get fund like the NEA or the Indiana Arts Commission, or is it all basically donated by the community?
The majority of our support comes from the community, although we are also a partner with the Indiana Arts Commission. Arts United is one of 12 regional arts partners, which means that the state of Indiana and the Indiana General Assembly puts in its budget every year some dollars that it allocates to the State Arts Commission, the Indiana Arts Commission. Those dollars are matched by National Endowment for the Arts monies, and they are distributed throughout the state. The state's motto is to make sure that arts are available every day, everywhere, for everybody. And they count on regional arts partners like Arts United to make sure that there are local decision makers and how those involved in how those dollars are spent. And so we want to make sure that dollars make it to LaGrange County, and dollars make it to southeast side of Fort Wayne, and dollars make it to some of our, large downtown-based cultural organizations that define quality of life in our community as well. And we're able to do that because we've got unique knowledge of arts and culture that happens here in Northeast Indiana.
And then you also advocate for the value of the arts.
That's right.
And you do that both on a local level as well as a regional and a state level, correct?
That's right. A few years ago, we partnered with the Indiana Arts Commission and the then known as the IPFW Center, CRI, Community Research Institute, which is now the Purdue Fort Wayne Community Research Institute. We worked on a creative economy study. So for the first time in the state of Indiana, we looked at arts and culture employment as a sector, and worked with government supported databases. So basically the databases that are generated when you file your taxes.
Right.
And we were able to do a count of how many creative sector employees are in Northeast Indiana, but also in the state of Indiana. In Northeast Indiana, there are over 18,800 arts and culture based jobs. That might include an accountant that works at an orchestra. It might include a graphic designer that works at a logistics company.
Right.
Or it might include a 1099 individual artist.
Right.
All of those are included in the creative sector. It's known as a hybrid sector because you see creatives impacting every other employment sector. You see creatives working in government and in healthcare and in manufacturing. Much like IT is very similar. It is a hybrid sector. So after learning that information, that there are about as many creative sector employees in Northeast Indiana as there are in banking and insurance, that began to raise some eyebrows. And when we started to have some conversations that really focused on arts, culture, quality of life, not just as nice things to have in a community to be able to raise your family, as they say, but also as serious opportunities for employment, talent attraction, business development, we really began to see our economic development organizations begin to champion quality of life, quality of place. So GFW and the Northeast Indiana Regional Partnerships have taken really serious steps forward in looking at how we can rally investment in the types of places, the types of amenities that will attract the creative class.
Well, and also you've been able to track that almost 26.2 million annually as an economic development from the arts campus resident organizations and their audiences. So, I mean, that's a direct impact of just getting the dollars, spent and involved, engaged in the community.
Yeah, and that's just the arts campus resident organizations. We've done another study more recently where we're looking at 18 anchor nonprofits in Fort Wayne. And this includes Arts United, the Museum of Art, the Philharmonic, the Embassy Theater, Science Central, History Center. These 18 organizations and their audiences had $50 million of economic impact last year. Half of that was direct spending by the organizations, paying people and buying sets and scenery design and doing the things that arts and culture organizations do. The other half was generated by audience members who not only buy a ticket to an event at the embassy or get ready to go to the Museum of Art to view a gallery, but while they're out, they buy dinner.
Right.
They pay for parking. And so that is an industry that really has a profound impact on the vitality of our downtown in particular.
And then also, I was surprised a bit to know that Arts United's involvement in civic development. And what role do you feel that Arts United plays in that area?
We work very closely with the City of Fort Wayne's Community Development Department. And most recently, we've worked together to develop a public art commission. I know you've recently spoken with Nancy Stewart, who's one of my very favorite human beings on the planet. She's been a real key driver as the inaugural chair of the Fort Wayne Public Art Commission. And under her leadership, we've put together a commission that's representative of the community. It was important when we were working to put this together to two of our city councilmen, Tom Freistraffer and Glenn Hines, that the Public Art Commission really be established in a way where half of its dollars are allocated to neighborhoods, so that we were really being geographically diverse and where public art can be found, and make sure that it's incorporated into the development and improvement of neighborhoods throughout the city. It was very important to them. So we've worked on building a program to do that. Last year, Nancy Stewart and the commission members, their 13-member commission, led the development of what they call the Art for All master plan, and went to communities, went to neighborhoods, and asked people, what do you want from public art? It's more than murals. It's more than sculptures. What do you want it to do? What do you want it to say about our community? And we built a master plan based on community feedback. People want it to be diverse. They want to be able to tell stories about social justice. They want public art to not just be murals and sculptures, but also be found in lighting and the way that we design our city to make it feel like a place, a destination, a place that's sticky, that people want to go. And we heard that from all demographics of our community. It was truly a cool experience.
Right. Now, to be fair, you're not giving yourself as much credit in terms of the development of the Public Arts Commission and researching even just before getting to the master plan. I mean, you were really instrumental in having to take a look and see how could we do this, and you looked at best practices from other cities and organizations. So I think you were a little bit more involved than you give yourself credit for.
There were a couple years of research, but we had the great benefit of having a group of volunteers that really spearheaded the research. My job was just to engage people in the process. But once we had people around the table, people like Ruth Stone was instrumental in that. Ben Eisbart and Sharon Eisbart were very instrumental. Irene Walters, really phenomenal thinkers and leaders in our community. And they did the work. They called public art commissions throughout the country and asked them what works, what doesn't. What would you do differently if you were to set this up from scratch? And ultimately, we were able to create a proposal that was a successful one for Fort Wayne.
Right. So I want to take a little bit of a step back because we immediately jumped into what you do at Arts United. But I want to talk a little bit about you and your involvement in nonprofits and arts organizations. Because your undergraduate degree was in nonprofit management, right? And then you got a master's degree in what was that? Philanthropic, right? So, did you always know that you wanted to do something in the nonprofit sector? Not necessarily the arts, but was that always a mission? It seemed like you were on that course.
I did. I went to Indiana University thinking I was going to become a journalist. And day one of Journalism 101, my very first college class, I just decided, this is not my fit. This is not my thing. And so then I thought, well, I'm going to become a lawyer because I think I want to work for community, and utilize the law to think about community building. And a friend of mine invited me to participate in a club called American Humanics, which was a group that got students out to do volunteer work for local nonprofits. I fell in love with it. And I discovered kind of by chance the School of Public and Environmental Affairs at Indiana University, and they had recently started an undergraduate program specializing in nonprofit management. And I thought, this is my fit. I'm going to do this. And I went into it thinking I would do something, pretty general, like community building or maybe hospital foundation type of work. My parents both are in the medical field, and that was something that called to me. But the first organization when I got out of college to hire me was the Fort Wayne Philharmonic. And I jumped into arts nonprofits kind of by mistake almost. I didn't know that was a path that I would go at the time.
Well, you also, because you claim that you're not artistic, so you're
I'm not.
Right. So it's not like you were fueling your passion of being an artist or something.
It's funny how your life threads kind of come together when the right fit happens. Right. I grew up, enjoying art class like a lot of kids do. I played the violin in high school and went to a very artistically oriented public high school, Pike High School in Indianapolis. And mostly I just tried to stay good enough so that I could flirt with the cute percussionist behind me. One of those
I dated a percussionist, but he was in the Newton Symphony Orchestra when I was in college. And it was because of him that I passed Music Appreciation 101 because I have no, musical abilities.
We all have our motivations, Sarah.
Right, exactly.
So, I had always had an opportunity to engage with arts and culture, but I never really thought of it as a career path until I was in it. And so, when I entered into this world, it just fascinated me how arts and culture activities are opportunities to really bring people together. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like one of the few opportunities where you spend time with people you don't know outside of work or maybe the political process. Mm-hmm. And it's an opportunity to spend time not only with people you may not know, but discussing ideas or experiencing other people's stories in ways that would be difficult to get from TV or reading a book. And in this place, think about in a theater environment, when somebody is doing a reenactment of Dr. Martin Luther King, for example, and you are transported back to the early 1960s, and you are able to enter into an experience of what it must have felt like to walk in his shoes during his time. Mm-hmm. That is a totally different way to experience civil rights than you might get from any other place. Mm-hmm. And you're going through that type of experience with 50 or 100 or 600 or more people at the same time. That's powerful. Mm-hmm. And, when I entered this field, I can't tell you that I'm creative. I can't tell you that I have any talent to contribute, but every artist needs a champion. Every artist needs a patron.
Right.
I'm one of the biggest fans, right, and happy to be able to be part of that professionally.
And then if you think about it, and then as fate would have it, one of the best philanthropic schools is the Lilly School at the Indiana University.
That's right.
So it all sort of worked together. And you made a comment, you have a daughter who's 8, 9 now?
8.
And you talked about that you get to experience the arts through her. So talk about that and how that's impacted or influenced your work with Arts United.
Oh, sure. So we've enrolled Claire in the Fort Wayne Ballet, not because I happen to work close to it, but because from the moment that she started to kick in the womb, I could tell this kid was a dancer. She can't help herself. She has to move anytime she hears any kind of music, and she expresses herself through her body. And we just knew that she needed to be engaged in a program that allowed her to explore that. And so we have enrolled her in Fort Wayne Ballet, and through that, really seen her grow. She's developed grace and poise and manners and teamwork in a way that is really special for our family and really fun to watch. Now, I don't know if she'll do ballet forever, but it certainly is fun to see her grow and kind of experience that through her. But I also bring her along. When I'm doing my job on the weekends, often my job is just to show up and be an advocate for arts and cultural activities. And she loves to come with me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes being able to see her at a children's choir performance or a Unity Performing Arts performance or a youth theater civic activity, and hear how she experienced that with different eyes than I do. It's fun. It's really fun to just be part of that.
And how has that sort of influenced what your work or how you think about the work of Arts United and what it gives to these arts and cultural organizations?
Well, I think arts and culture is something to be experienced together. And it's something that, not only do we, think that it impacts each individual, but it's also something that impacts communities and neighborhoods and families. And so, it's important to remember that this stuff is not for other people, it's for each of us.
Mm-hmm. And that building that. And so when you think about being a leader of a arts and cultural organization, and, obviously Arts United is a key anchor in the community and has a lot of, I would say, influence on the organization. How do you think about being a leader, and what skills do you think you sort of bring to the table, or maybe also then utilize what you see from artists or culture experiences?
Well, just like most cultural activities that happen, they are group activities. And I have the real pleasure of working with an amazing board of directors. In effect, I have 27 bosses. And not only are they bosses, but they're advocates for the mission and the work that we're doing. And my job is to help make sure that they have information they need to make good decisions about how to develop, coordinate, and support arts and culture in our community. And I have the real privilege of working with an extremely talented group of people. Arts United has some of the hardest working, most creative minds working for us. And every day I get to go to work and, be part of the work that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's just really fulfilling. Sometimes my role is just to be in the room and listen and ask questions.
Mm-hmm. That's being a journalist. Yeah, those skills that you didn't think you had. See?
Yeah.
They came back. So you can use them.
Yeah. So, from a leadership perspective, there are good days, there are hard days, but it's fulfilling because, we're all moving in a direction that matters for the community.
Right. And I think also that you sort of appreciate the history and those that came before you. Like, you recognize the work that Jim Sparrow did to really set downtown on that path and had the vision. And you really look at your job in a lot of ways is to implement, and sort of continue to have that vision be realized. And I think that's, important.
Yeah, I actually had lunch with Jim today.
Oh.
And
was he in town, or is he? Oh, he's back. That's right. He's now with the ballet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does he think you're doing, filling his shoes? I always say that you should say to him, though, you look better because you wear stilettos.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
You're adding a little flash to filling his shoes.
You do stand on the shoulders of the giants that came before you.
Right.
And Jim had a real vision and a notion for how communities would develop around the arts and how important the arts would become to downtown development in particular, and set Arts United on a course to really influence those outcomes. And being able to follow him has been a real joy.
And you're also a studier. I think that's partly maybe the journalist in you, or maybe wanting to be a lawyer, but you do also seek out research. And, I think you are, sort of avid, being curious and knowing, because you talk about that one of your most influential thinkers is, Bob Putnam, who you think is a social capital author and a Bowling Alone. And so this idea of how community creates value and connects. And so I think that your understanding of that also parlays into what's happening on the arts campus. Is that true?
Yeah. I do think about Bob Putnam, and he did write Bowling Alone. Gosh, he wrote it in 2000, year 2000. So the book is aging, but the premise is important for anybody who's involved with community organizing or building neighborhoods and communities. And the idea is pretty simple. Who you know and the trust that you build is valuable. And taken on a large scale, communities where it's easy to network, easy to get to know people, and easy to build trust in them, and to feel safe sharing information and working together on projects that ultimately serve the broader community. They are communities with a high degree of social capital. Those communities tend to be more prosperous than communities where it's difficult to trust people, difficult to get to know people, where people really can't work together easily. And you see that in arts and culture. That again, going back to that idea that when you go to a cultural event, it's really one of the few times during your day where you might be with a group of people that you don't know, sharing an idea that maybe somebody else's perspective or a new idea or a new concept, sometimes a difficult idea or concept. That is building social capital, is experiencing that together and talking about it together. It builds civil society. That's important.
And so partly also what you've been really involved in is also the master plan for the arts campus. So let's talk a little bit about that and where you are in that plan.
Sure. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have 7 cultural facilities that have developed over time in response to a vision that was put forth in the early 1960s and has been, gradually invested in over time. And it's time to take a look at those cultural facilities and make sure that they're equipped to serve our community today. So we've spent about 5 years really looking at what the founders of the Arts Campus envisioned and looking at how can we really define this as a place. And so we worked with a group, One Lucky Guitars, a local marketing boutique, and Matt Kelly. They're fantastic. You should interview Matt.
Okay.
He's great. And a group of champions to actually give this thing a name, a brand, which it hadn't before. So we're calling this Cultural District Arts Campus Fort Wayne. And we worked with the community at large to really envision how can we improve these buildings to make sure that they're set up to advance arts and culture and engage more people in the arts. And we know that to be successful, these facilities need to be fully accessible and make sure that they're equipped not only for people who have disabilities or who are aging to sit in the auditorium, but also to perform on stage or to work the ticket counter or to be, at any role in the theater or really any of our facilities. So accessibility is a real big deal to us. Inclusion is a big deal to us, making sure that the types of programming that happens in cultural facilities is truly welcoming to everybody and has something to offer for everybody. And anybody locally can develop something. When we look at the arts campus as opposed to some other cultural venues, this is a place that really fosters local arts and culture programs and ideas. Other places in the community, which are wonderful, we're huge fans of these places like the Embassy Theater or the Clyde. They serve an important purpose by bringing, events and shows and productions to town that are traveling. But in the arts campus, uniquely, this is creativity that's at home.
You don't have like traveling shows. It's all performances and things from local.
Primarily.
Wow.
Primarily. Yeah.
I don't think people realize that. I don't think you would think about that, but now that you pointed out, that makes sense. Yeah.
So when you see a production by the Fort Wayne Ballet, those are dancers that are employed here. This is until very recently, the only professional ballet company in the state of Indiana and known internationally for its really high quality dancers. And in fact, ballet productions come to the Fort Wayne Ballet because they have achieved a certain level of skill where they are allowed to dance.
Right.
Certain
They have that
dance.
respect and
They do.
you have to earn it. Yeah.
You have to earn it in the world of ballet. So they're able to do things in Fort Wayne that even larger cities aren't able to do, which is really cool. But it's all local artists, locally organized, and so that is the purpose of the arts campus. And so we know space is a need for arts and culture organizations too. And we're constantly looking at how do we make sure that we're accommodating the types of spaces that create good experiences for local people to be in a choir, dance, ballet, participate in a cultural exhibit.
Right.
I think about ArtLink and the work that it does to support local and regional artists, and the civic theater and the opportunities they give to local actors and choreographers, dancers, and musicians. So we're constantly thinking about how do we make these spaces great so that those individuals can have a great experience in developing and sharing their work with others.
Right. I was really surprised because obviously I've interviewed and talked to you quite a few times when to learn about how you think about that the arts should be really integrated into the fabric of downtown, and that it's not just a place that you would come, maybe when there is a performance, but really make it truly accessible. And so what amazed me was that how Arts United was involved with rethinking the Russo Plaza. Mm-hmm. And also, this fascinated me about your work with IDOT. About, who knew you were in the traffic business? So explain how that came about and how you think about how place literally impacts the arts.
Well, we know the behavior of people who attend arts and cultural activities is that when they come downtown for an event, they're likely to park and walk somewhere for dinner, walk somewhere to go to a park. And we want to make sure that as we develop and think about Arts Campus Fort Wayne as a destination, and when somebody comes, they're having a great experience and they stay downtown for a while. And so when we're thinking about that, we're working very closely with our friends at the city and at the county to look at that and to develop those corridors. So when the landing was developed, one of the ideas that we had was how do we get people from the arts campus in Fryman Square across Clinton safely so that they can go and have dinner and go shopping at the landing and go walk around Promenade Park. And so, these aren't our projects that are happening right now. They're happening because of the county and because of the city. But you see a lot of
road work in the streets. You had to have somebody spearhead them.
Yeah.
But I thought the most interesting was you're changing the number of lanes or shortening the turn lane.
We're hoping that happens at some point to make it safer and more convenient crossing.
But also how you're really thinking about how to use Russo Plaza as sort of a pathway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that maybe once that's achieved, there'll be some cool sculpture and maybe a sculpture garden or.
We hope so too.
Yeah. So, it's really, so it goes so much far beyond just what you think about, and in terms of how to engage the community in the arts is really touching all aspects of what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the issues facing the arts, both pre-COVID and now what I'm going to say is in COVID and post-COVID. So you sent a letter out on March 18th, where you said that this was probably one of the most important messages and letters that you sent out. And talk about this idea of how we had to support our artists. And you talked about the idea of you were trying to debunk the myth of the starving artist, yet what COVID sort of showed us is that it's still very much relevant, and what artists and performers do, the sacrifices they make for their art. So talk about how Arts United stepped in and sort of what you did and what you see needs to change in that aspect.
Sure. Well, COVID-19 is a real challenge that this country, this world has not seen since 1918. So it's kind of a 100-year event. I hope that it will never happen again during our lifetime. But it has uniquely impacted the creative sector. For many individual artists, we're seeing total loss of income. Just total loss of income. They are part of the gig economy. Right. They are earning 1099 jobs. and maybe they're waiting tables or doing bar work at night so that they can afford to do their craft during the day. And, just the devastation for individual artists has been pretty significant. We also saw a lot of nonprofits in particular that are major employers of creatives, and take a look at this period of time and say, whoa, what do we do? And so Arts United got to work, and we started pulling people together and building some alliances. And ultimately, I have to tell you, I'm just so proud of where we landed with focusing on the resilience of arts and culture organizations and the true leadership that's been exhibited by the leaders of these major arts and culture nonprofits, about 18 of them, as I've said. So with their advice and with advice from some of our donors and community leaders, we were able to do a couple things. One, we partnered with the Community Foundation and received a grant from the Knight Foundation to do rapid response artist relief grants that helped individual artists who were seeing a total loss of income get some money and get some technical assistance to apply for pandemic unemployment assistance, which was something that most gig workers don't have experience doing.
Right. Well, nobody had experience doing, but yeah.
Yeah. So that was something that we did. And over the course of about 3 months, we distributed grants to about 85 individual artists. And we're looking at a second phase of that program. So we're very proud of that. Secondly, we worked with about 32 organizations and venues and the Allen County Department of Health to develop an arts and culture reopening guide. And this was an important activity, not only because ultimately it resulted in a document, which is available on our website if anybody would like to know that, but it was an important activity because we got people together and talking about how do we restart, how do we reopen, and how do we do it safely, or as safe as possible. So we pulled together cohorts of arts and culture organizations to look at how do we run a box office during COVID-19? How do we do youth programming? How do we do outreach programming if we're so lucky to be able to go back into schools and nursing homes and hospitals?
How do you do Taste of the Arts?
How do you do that kind of thing? So we looked at 7 different components of arts and cultural activities, including outdoor events and activities, and developed guidelines and really got arts and culture organizations talking together about how to do that. And we were able to establish, to a great degree with Mindy Waldron's help at the Department of Health, permission almost to reopen and restart, and the ability to tell our community that, yes, you can go experience arts and culture during this time. It's going to look different, but you can do it and you can be as safe as possible. And because of a lot of that work, museums reopened. And you see the Fort Wayne Civic Theater doing 1776 at Bollinger Outdoor Theater this weekend. We see things like
the Taste of the Arts,
which went all online this year, but set a really high bar. And arts and culture is continuing, which is important for our community. It's this is a time not only of economic and financial stress, but it's a time of psychological stress. It's a time when we're really examining the impact of systemic racism in our communities. There's a lot of healing to do. And arts and culture is one of those tools, those ways that we can help our community heal.
And do you think that the community has been responsive in helping? I mean, have you seen donations and, some of the different calls to action that you put out? Have you seen the community step up and want to help the arts?
We did. At the close of last season, many organizations work with a season that ends sometime in May and June. We saw a lot of people say, I know I bought tickets, I'm going to donate my tickets. I know that you need the cash. So that was important to see. But we also started to take a look at some of the long-term or maybe intermediary term effects that arts and culture organizations expected to experience over the next 12 to 18 months. And we worked together with about 7 philanthropic leaders in our community and put together a fund called the Arts and Culture Nonprofit Resilience Fund. So in total right now, we have about $2.7 million in dollars that will be granted out to 18 anchor organizations in September, January, and April. We hope to grow that number from 2.7 to a greater number over the next few months. And we've seen great results from that. We're seeing arts organizations being able to take a breath, retain staff, be able to maintain programming and continue to engage with the community. And that's really important to be able to get to the finish line of the pandemic.
And there were some organizations that were struggling or having difficulty even before COVID, like Cinema Center. So, I mean, how does this exacerbate their demise, or do you think that it will help the community support them, or is it that times have changed and certain organizations or entities, are no longer relevant? How do you assess that or look at an entity like that?
Yeah, there are. I have to tell you, I've just been incredibly impressed by the leadership and the adaptiveness of arts and culture leaders right now, particularly those who knew that some of their business models were challenged anyway. They are needing to reinvent how they serve the community. And, we don't have the end to this chapter yet, so I can't predict to you what it will look like when we get to the end of this. But what I can tell you that I have faith in is the leadership, the adaptive mindset, the support of the boards of these organizations, and the community rallying to support our arts and cultural anchors right now. It may look different in the future. It will have to look different in the future. It's appropriate that we do this differently in the future. But I'm optimistic.
And so you're going to continue to be the champion in the funnel of ideas and connectors in the arts?
We will do our best. We will play our part.
And what do you think about this idea of, in this time, do you feel that because there was a significant decline in millennials going and supporting the arts and being, patrons, and do you think that because of, like, for instance, when there was the protest downtown and then they boarded up some of that naturally these artists were just inclined to make pieces of art that made statements out of them, so they became active and engaged, or, recognizing that they need to support these organizations. Do you think that one of the good things that comes out of this is the fact that you're going to see more of the younger generations involved and engaged?
I think that's very likely. I think gone are the days where we think about art for art's sake. Art is a means to communicate something, to share an experience, share an idea. And right now, there are a lot of individuals who are challenging us to think differently, confront our own unconscious bias, confront systemic racism and other barriers to full participation in the community and the economy. And artists have a real role in being able to spur those conversations. And I think millennials, and I am one, we are a generation that's really drawn to causes. We're a generation that's really drawn to making the world a better place. And the arts are very relevant to making the world a better place.
Right. Absolutely. Both for expression and to communicate and to heal.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, we did not get to half of what I wanted to, which is seems to be my normal around here.
It's my long-winded answers.
So, well, that's good. So I hope you will come back.
Happy to.
Okay. But at the end of each And Good Company program, I ask guests the same 12 questions that were popularized by Marcel Proust, a French author. And he believed it was based on a Victorian parlor game. And Proust believed that by answering these questions, you are showing your true nature.
Okay.
Okay. So what is your favorite word?
Oh, I don't know. Probably awesome.
What is your least favorite word?
Can't.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Teamwork,
What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
conflict.
What sound or noise do you love?
Symphony.
I would have thought an audience applauding, but
I like that one.
I'm influencing you. I'm not allowed to do that. What sound or noise do you hate?
Nails on a chalkboard.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I'd love to be an academic someday.
What profession would you not like to do?
Politician.
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
Supporting others.
Who, living or dead, would you most like to have a conversation with?
My grandfather, Bob Ledger.
How would you like to die?
I would like to say in a comfortable setting, but part of me is kind of like doing something fabulous.
I like that. And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done, good and faithful servant.
Well, I want to thank you for having a conversation and being at the table. And hopefully you will come back, because I think the importance of arts and culture in our community needs to be a discussion that we continue to have and bring forth the importance of it and how it brings such richness to our lives.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it and to share some time with you, Sarah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So please join me next time when you can again enjoy a seat at the table for great conversation and good company.